Hello. Well, Christmas will soon be here, and how it is welcome after the dark months of the pandemic. We look forward with joyful anticipation to the story of the Saviour's birth, the star, the stable, the angel choir, the watchful shepherds, the visit of the wise men, Joseph and Mary, and most of all, baby Jesus lying in the manger. As we look at the story more closely, watch out for hidden blessings. The Roman Empire was hard pressed for cash in order to run its huge empire and its administration. So, a national survey of Judea took place every 14 years in order to find out how many people could be taxed. Now, this entailed people travelling back to their own cities. But this census would not have been made in winter when temperatures were often dropping below freezing and the roads were in poor condition. That's a blessing. Mary and Joseph set off on their journey to Bethlehem, 90 miles away. They would have divided their journey roughly into 4 20-mile stages, which was usual for those days, which allowed them plenty of time to rest, during which they would have received the benefit of Jewish hospitality. You know, it was regarded as sacred duty in those days to receive, feed and lodge any traveller who might stop at one's door. That was a blessing. In Luke chapter 11 verses 5 to 8, Jesus told the story of the householder who rose up from his bed at midnight to give a visitor on his journey food and provision. And so after 4 days, perhaps 5 at the most, Mary and Joseph would have reached the little town of Bethlehem, which, due to the crowds attending the taxation census, all looking for accommodation, was, as we say, packed out. The usual type of accommodation could not be found. And their only chance was the local inn, only to be told on inquiring, no room, which really turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Now let us not compare the inn that was close to them that day with the modern inn of today. This Palestinian inn was in reality a caravanserai, a sort of commercial traveller's overnight stop. If Mary and Joseph had stayed at this inn, what would they have found awaiting them? 2 flights of steep steps, climbing up to a couple of rows of open-ended rooms with the barest of necessities, allowing no privacy, a courtyard below full of noisy guests bartering with traders for the sale of sheep which were slaughtered there and then and roasted on an open fire. Just think of the smoke, the stench, and the flies. What expectant mother would have wanted to stay there. So they settled for a stable, which was offered to them at the back of the inn, used as a livestock shelter. The manger, of course, was a feeding trough for the animals. Now, sadly, over the years, a myth has sprung up about the cold-heartedness of the innkeeper, when the complete opposite is true. He was, in fact, doing Mary and Joseph a favour. That was a blessing, wasn't it? He was a charitable man, and encouraged by his wife, who, when she was aware of Mary's condition, would have alerted the BMWs, the Bethlehem midwives. Jewish midwives are mentioned 8 times in the book of Exodus, chapter 1. Such was the importance of bearing children. Jewish law, the Talmud, demanded that a woman about to give birth must be, wherever possible, assisted by a Hebrew midwife, even on a Sabbath day. And in the case of a firstborn child, most important, 2 midwives would probably arrive to minister to Mary. And just in case you were wondering about Joseph's part in all this, no Hebrew father was allowed to witness the birth of his child. So, did Mary and Joseph settle for a second best when they settled for the stable? No way. God doesn't do second best. Okay, so there was no room for them in the inn. But there was plenty of room for them in the grace of God, as there is for all of us to continue. Now the shepherds, guided by the star, soon found the stable and the Saviour. But what about the wise men in the story? Astrologers. They didn't come on the scene with their gifts until 2 years later. What kept them? Well, guided by that same star, and considering that they had to travel an estimated of 9,000 miles from their home in the east with baggage on slow-moving camels, it's not surprising, is it? So why didn't God tell them to start their journey earlier? Well, by the time they did arrive, Joseph and Mary and young Jesus, now a bright 2-year-old, were living in a house. Joseph may have established himself as a carpenter at that time in order to provide a living, another blessing. After presenting their gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh, they told of how King Herod was seeking to kill Jesus. So Joseph, being warned in a dream, took his little family off to Egypt. And it was a blessing again, because the young child Jesus was now strong enough to make the 40-mile journey, and then later, with Mary and Joseph, to return to Nazareth after Herod's death. Well, the Bible tells us, and we know that all things work together for good to them who are the called according to his purpose. Romans 9:28. They sure do. Oh, every blessing and a happy Christmas, everyone.